Dear listeners, welcome at another stand-alone episode from podcast channel Solid State Society, episode called Social Behavior Hygiene. What is it, social behavior hygiene? It's idea, it's theory that I came with. Idea that is trying to explain how negative environment can breed and start negative, basically, emotional plagues that spread, or negative ideologies, if you want, that can spread through human population. First, I will explain how it works. When I start to come with this theory, I often think about if there is connection between state of modern special left, the young people on universities around our world, the white people that constantly feel self-hatred of themselves, their culture and their race, in the point of almost suicidal notion, and how this came to be. And I start to believe, and yes, entire theory is work in progress. Maybe it's not true, maybe it's not right, maybe it's not quite how I think it is, but this is just theory. And this theory is important because if I am right, it have actually great consequences on our world, or it should have consequences of how we behave and how we tolerate negative behavior of other people and other communities. So, come back. Germans, after World War II, was entire human global Western civilization bullied as hell. Yes, they was bullied. There was constant blame for sins and crimes, especially World War II. This actually started even before. It was actually started in not just at the end, but during World War I, the hate of Germans. I have theory why that happened, and there are actually people who, I believe there was like British writer who at the start of World War I immediately make articles hating German nation, hating German people. And honestly, and don't forget, I'm person who was born in Czechoslovakia and now living in Czechia. We are neighbors of Germans. We suffer from both of wars, and we actually was part of Austro-Hungary Empire before start of World War I, and we was one of the first countries conquered by Nazis Germany as well. So I am basically a person from environment and from nation that could tell much about reality of that things. The truth is that the bullying of Germans was not right. It was not deserved as everybody thinks. Yes, bad things happened, especially during World War II. There was things like Holocaust, concentration camps, and that was terrible, of course. I do not denying, and I don't say it was right. No, it was terrible and it was bad. But to more understand what I am thinking about, and I will talk about in different episode. This is topic not for this episode. Is that bullying Germans, especially those who was born after the World War II, who have nothing to do with crimes during World War I, especially during World War II, was not right. It was applying of group and heritage guilt, and that's bad, especially if you are Christian. If you believe in what the Bible says, if you believe in Jesus, you should always denied heritage and group guilt. It's one of the basic fundamental stones of Christian belief, and from that it should be founding stones and belief of ideas and thinking of our Western European-centric civilization. So it was bad, and I am often very critique of modern leftist ideologies, and especially feminism. And the main reason why I am critique of them is that they are trying to apply group and heritage guilt. And that is always bad. Not because I don't believe that there is no heritage or group guilt. The reality is that it actually is. But as the founders, probably if we take what's in Bible is written, then John Baptist saw is that it's better to apply it on entire community, on your people, to deny them, to persuade them that there is not such thing as group and special heritage guilt. It's better for society itself. It's better for the people if they cannot blame you for sins of your fathers. That's why I believe the baptism was actually created. And if it's really John Baptist who created, then we should thank him, we humanity, not just Christians, but basically everybody, because everybody is now taking roots or taking achievements of European, Western, on Christianity based achievements and using them for themselves, even when they do not believe in Christianity. I am not Christian also, but I live on things what was built based on this idea that there is no heritage and group guilt and should not be. This is huge. This is founding stones of our civilization. Not just our religion, but our civilization. And I generally believe all civilization, human civilization, should be based on this idea, because it's better for us to believe in this idea that you cannot be judged for sins of your father. But in last 8 years, we did go against this idea, especially in Germans, when we blame them for sins of their fathers. Until this day, we are constantly mocking them. We are constantly doing movies and shows and constantly bullying them all the time. And it's wrong. And I will explain why it's wrong. Because it's wrong to say that something is wrong. You must be capable to actually argue why is that wrong. And I will demonstrate you why this is the case. First of all, bullying Germans for entire World War II or even World War I, but that's not matter, is wrong. Because both world wars start in first case, it was actually Austrians who started World War I when they started to fighting with Russians over Siberia, small nation in south of Europe. And if you don't trust me, go and Google it. How I know that? Because my country and my nations was actually part of Austria-Hungary Empire. My nation, and yes, it was multi-nation state. It was Austrian, it was Czechs, Slovaks, Hungarians, and few others, small or new nations inside of this quite a big empire in the middle of Europe. And we started war because we started fighting with Russians. And it was actually Germans who come as our allies to start with us, fight with France, then with Britain and with Russians. And Second World War II, yes, that was started by Germans, but together with Russians again. But we never blame Russians. We even allow Russians to believe that they win World War II. And we never bullied them. And how that end up. If Russians be expanding more than ever, starting after almost 80 years of peace, another war in the Europe. So maybe it was wrong to not bully them as well. Do not pointing out that, hey, you Russians, you started World War II and World War I as well. You shut up. It was probably a mistake. And second thing is, even if we look on World War II, yes, Germans did it, and Germans started, but Germans was led by Austrian men. The mustache man, you know what I'm talking about, was not German. He was Austrian. And how I know that? Yes, because again, he was born as the citizen of Austrian-Hungarian Empire, not Germany. So why we do not look and say, hey, he actually went to foreign country, neighboring, yes, but still foreign country, and took power from inside. We never look upon it. I know it's kind of twisting that anyway, he was Austrian, not German. But of course, Germans followed him and did terrible things. We could blame them for that. Yes, the blaming and bullying is two different things. But anyway, even if we accept that Germans did it, then we still need to know that there was many terrible things that happen from many other countries. And saying that only Germans are the evil ones because they did this is basically bullying only one person. Find out one child in our kindergarten group and bullying only that child. That's not fair. That's not right. Because many other nations did many terrible things, almost on the same level or even worse level than Holocaust during the World War II. And even Jews, if they are angry, even if Jews will now start pointing out how you can say that Holocaust during World War II was the worst one. There was genocide happening on Jewish population many times before. Yes, it was not as worst, or not as huge as during World War II, but probably because technology, because organization of the people. Basically, if our technology would be evolved 1,000 years early, then instead of going to look on German concentration camp in Poland, like Auschwitz, we would travel and watching concentration camps inside of Spain. Yes, the Spanish did genocide on Jewish people as well, just few centuries before, and they was not so organized and technologically on so level as Germans. So is it really fair to blame only Germans when this happened before? And again, I don't saying it was not wrong. Of course it was wrong. And we should not forget. But actually, I hate the sentence, we should not forget. Because constantly repeating that this has happened, many people became basically numb. I understand survivors feel pain and suffering and want to talk about it and want to stop it to repeat it. But we are repeating that over and over for 80 years. That's not right. People, if you repeat them, constant same thing, you or that people became numb to your suffering. It's like constantly complaining that your neighbor, let's say, run over by his car, your pet. Yeah, for some time he will feel the guilt, but if you repeat it for weeks, months, even years, how long it will take until the neighbor became so numb that he will basically become even angry on you that you constantly complaining about it. He will stop. So, and why I'm talking about, you probably trying to figure out. My point is that this create toxic environment in Germany. And I believe that what is happening right now, worldwide, whites around special lefts around the world, on universities and rest of our culture, they are hating themselves, they are hating our race and their own culture, because it's basically mental disease that evolved in toxic environment in Germany after World War II, where German people, a nation, was constantly bullied by global culture that evolved in self-hatred, almost suicidal, masochistic feeling, mental behave. And why I believe that, why I connect with the bullying of Germans after World War II to spread of this self-hatred, almost masochistic thinking of woke leftist liberal, white woke leftist liberal around the world, because I have other examples how negative environment lead to spread of toxic and probably we can say evil ideologies around in our past around the world. But let's start to think again from different angle. Most of us people, we understand that keeping high level of cleanliness, of hygiene, of our environment and our body is important. And it's important to stop to evolving, spreading, or even starting disease and illness of our bodies. Basically, we can say that we should keep cleanliness of our apartment or house, and we should keep clean our bodies constantly as much as possible, because that will lead that many disease will not start and or spread, or we will at least stop or spreading disease if we will become ill caused by some disease. We will stop or limited at least spread of the disease. This is concept what most of us today understand and accept. Especially women like to keep cleanness because of that. Yes, I know, in our twisted modern 21st century culture, there are some special women who start to almost brag and be proud on the fact that they are, let's say, do not take showers anymore or on minimum as they can. Yes, they are twisted people, but generally most of us understand the logic, keeping cleanliness, keeping of hygiene for stopping evolving and spreading disease and illness. We understand that. And most of us also understand that this could be applied on environmental or almost global level. We understand that if there will be city, let's say city where there will be thousands, hundreds of thousands, or even millions of people living on very close space, and the city will be unclean, let's say there will be open sewers, there will be trash uncollected, piled on the streets, there will be huge problem with insects or rats. People will not people in the city will not keep cleanness itself. Let's say they will be not washing their hands often. We understand that this situation will probably lead to moment where some illness, some disease, or even plague appeared and was spread across entire city, and unfortunately probably not just in the city, but it was spread probably across the borders of the city, let's say entire continent or entire planet. Basically, this is even idea or what probably happened with COVID. Yeah, it doesn't matter if it was from laboratory. Let's say it evolved naturally on the market from some, I believe, bat. Yeah, unclean markets was reason why disease appeared and spread, and that disease spread worldwide. And I should not remind you, but I will. This disease cost us officially 7 million people, but probably more than 20, maybe 23, 25 million of people worldwide. So keeping cleanliness on markets inside China should be our priority. And this is what I want to talk. Because we understand importance of hygiene, of cleanliness, on individual level, on also global scale or environmental scale level, in case of real disease. But the social behavior hygiene is idea or theory of mine that maybe this and could and should be applied also on basically behavior or ideas that are spreading in the people. I already talked about Germany and how I believe that the bullying of Germans after World War II led to spread this terrible disease of masochistic self-hatred around the world. But we have another examples. Let's say Russians. We know now that after or during or let's say beginning of 20th century, in Russia took power communism. Communism was not originally, of course, from the Russia itself, but spread there very much. And communists take over and built the communist dictatorship that caused millions and millions of deaths, and building a Soviet Union that together with allies almost led our world to total atomic annihilation. So many not good things. But even in my country, that was actually, especially during communist era, very close to Russians and Russian culture, we actually do not think very much about how the spread of communism was caused by toxic environment that happened in the Russia before start World War I. I again will probably talk about in different episodes, and probably in episode of Three Quantity of Evil, where I will be talking about communism. But very basically, for those who are unaware or do not know, environment in Russia before rise of the communism was very bad. It's actually, we can see that many times in many places. Harsh, very quick industrialization often leads to negative outcome, because if harsh industrialization happen, it often leads that there are bourgeoisie, there are people who became very rich, industrial leaders who became very rich, but on other hand, they are still very poor on other hand, and in rest of the society, and this is lead to great inequality, poverty, and huge problem in the society. This is happening or happened just a few decades in China. This happened basically in Africa, and this happened also in Russia. Environment in Russia before rise of communism and take over the power by Bolsheviks led by Lenin was not coincidence. It was very much outcome of negative environment what was in the Russian back there. Very rich people compared to very, very poor people. The most using the word funny is not the best, but most ironic thing is that Russians back then was enormously poor. Most of the Russia back then was on level of middle age. People was enormously poor. They was literally living in mud. I saw a few pictures and videos how it actually looked in Russia back then before rise of the communism, and it was terrible. It was literally terrible. On the other hand, their leader, Tsar Nicholas II, was probably one of the richest men on the world. And he is personally responsible for death of millions of people, especially during war with Japan. That was not great leader, and that was not like kind father as you can see in Disney movies like Anastasia. No, it was power hungry, aggressive. Don't forget that he is the one of the reason why World War I started. The self-centric man, and by the way, he caused almost so much death as the Lenin after him. Yes, I always says that communists are one of the worst ideologies, and their leaders are one of the worst murderers in our human history. And the greatest problem of our today culture is that we do not acknowledge that. We do not see that. That's our huge problem. But still, the Tsar Nicholas II was almost or have so much blood on his hands, almost as Lenin. And yes, Lenin lived very shortly, or he ruled just very shortly, and half of the time he spent basically like vegetable in mental state of vegetable because his STD basically meshed up his brain. But anyway, it doesn't matter. The matter is that situation before communist was actually very dire as well. And this situation, this toxic environment where people was enormously poor, and on the other hand there was very small amount of man that was enormously rich, but many capitalists will probably say, so they was rich and what they deserved. No, there was actually many feudals in Empire Russia that do not deserve rich as they should, especially their Tsar Nicholas II. And we can see that it was basically similar situation even in Rome Republic during the rise of Caesar, because there was problem with too much poverty, too much divide between rich and poor as well. And that led to creating of one man basically marching into Rome itself and taking all the power, Caesar. So negative, and that's the point of social behavior hygiene. That if you have environment, let's say state, where the people, the environment of that state is so toxic, and I'm talking only on right now on mental level, that people are suffering, divide between groups is so so great that they do not understand each other. Similar as we saw that before on during French Revolution. French feudals and royalty was so disconnected from the people of the France that they was not able to spot or be aware that change is coming. They was not able to actually fix the problems of the French people, what eventually led to French Revolution. We often, there is a few months of, it's maybe a year, no, I don't know, a few months ago it appeared and it was topic of many videos and discussion, how often men think about ancient Rome. It was basically discussion and argument how men and women think differently. The proof that we men think about Rome so much or more often than women. And I don't want to talk about it. What I want to talk about is that, dear men, or also you ladies, maybe we should for the moment stop thinking about Rome, but start to think about France. And I mean France just before and during French Revolution. Because what happened then, there is one of that great examples. Royalty is so disconnected, and people, normal common people, so much suffering, living in so toxic environment that actually breed new ideas, new ideologies, very negatively and murderous ideologies that overtook the government and then start to do things that was not very good. I know it was very short period, but La Terror, the moment where the people was killing, murdered under guillotine, was not the happy time also. It was much harder than terror, let's say, in communist China or communist Russia, Soviet Union, but still it was not good as well. But what I'm pointing out is that toxic environment leads to negative outcomes. We can see that in ancient Rome. We can see that in France. We can see that in Russia before rise of the communism. We can probably see that in, of course, in Germany before World War II. Toxic environment, state that is failing, hyperinflation, humiliation from Versailles Treaty, that's toxic environment as well. And my point is, it doesn't matter what will actually came out from this unhygiene environment. It doesn't matter if it's Nazism, communism, French Revolution, or it's personated in one person like in Caesar, but toxic environments breed disease. We know that on our physical level, we know that in real disease, but maybe the same thing is in thinking of people, in spreading of negative ideologies, in spreading of negative behavior between people. That's what I'm actually trying to point out in my series of gender wars and next series of failures of women and Asian complex. That the state where gender wars, interaction between men and women is now, is toxic environment that's probably now giving born of new ideology or new behavior pattern where the man will be actually very, how to say it, where the man will actually start hating women, and that will end up with things like State of Gilead from Handmaid's Tale. That's my point. And I know, and I pointed out several times that feminism negatively influenced women by many lies, and one of the great lies is they persuade that men hate women. and many women believe in that. It's not true. Most men even love women. We are literally programmed to please the woman and take care about the woman. That toxic environment of today probably led to evolving of new type of behavior, new type of ideology, and I believe the red pill community or manosphere is just beginning of something larger. Same way as the communism takes shape through many years. It's first it was socialism, then it was called communism, then from communism evolved actual Bolshevism, when the leaders of Bolshevism, Lenin, took power and became dictator in Russian, then it's evolved again. So it was process of evolving. And in gender wars, we are probably already in process of evolving. And if we say that it will be same as with the communism, and we are just in the first steps of just gathering the movement, then, dear ladies, you have very much to looking for. Trust me. That's my point. My point of social behavior hygiene is that negative environment on state-like, huge community-like level led to evolving and spreading negative behavior pattern and evil ideologies. And to be honest, the reason why I actually start to think to recording this episode and create this model of social behavior hygiene is a situation in today China. Because the situation in China in last several decades is something what I'm very, very much concerned. Because if I'm right, if social behavior hygiene is how the things actually works, then we have huge part of the world with a huge group of people that are living in very toxic, I'm talking only in mental state, behavioral state, very toxic environment that is giving birth to probably very negative behavior pattern and new evil ideologies. Basically, with the same example, like with that city, what I said, that if you will have city that is quite unhygiene, that is very dirty, and it only take time until some kind of plague will evolve that. The same way I'm looking on today's China and just are horrified by idea that maybe any time some kind of mental plague will appear in China and spread around the world, same way as physical COVID appeared in China and spread around the world. And that's what I am very much afraid. Reason why I'm afraid, reason why I start to think about it, was actually one of comics. I'm a fan of comics. I like to read them, especially the Japanese one. I know for someone it appeared like something childish, but maybe not in many Western comics, but still, also in many Western comics, but especially in Asian, like Japanese one, there are themes in comics that appeared, ideas that are very interesting, and they are very adult-like philosophies, and in animation, you can make scenes like you cannot film or create in real life. So I generally believe the comics is not just fun for childish person or children, but it can explore ideas, philosophies, and themes that are much deeper and darker, and definitely not for the children. My channel itself is actually rooted in one of this anime manga. Solid State Society is literally philosophy or idea from the movie from series Ghost in the Shell. And Ghost in the Shell is one of the most important cyberpunk transhumanist series ever created worldwide. But what I'm talking about, I was reading one of manga for several nights when I was working on reception, and what strikes me was that I analyzed the manga. That manga was created by probably some normal, typical Chinese man. But when I start to think about it, it was kind of typical superhuman story, post-apocalyptic superhuman story, that some catastrophe happened and main character gained superpowers, and how we deal with the rest of the society or what will happen. It's kind of often, it's typical, let's say, post-catastrophe stories combined with stories of superpower that could give you advantage over other people. It's typical. But difference is how it handled team, how it handled behavior of people. And more I basically psychologically analyze this manga, and probably the own creator, more disturbed I became, because what he probably unconsciously says through that manga was something what I was pretty aware how environment in China it is. There are huge problems with poverty, there are enormous corruption, still dictatorship, still totalitarian dictatorship leader. There is censorship. There are problems who Chinese People Republic are not fixing or even doing much worse. And especially there is problem with one-child policy, and from that population crisis and instability with male compared to female population. Even when there is only 20 million men more in 1 billion population more than women, still women are hypergamous, and as the rest in the world in modern civilization, and that's create situation where basic acquire women is even more hard and more basically inaccessible from average men than in more rest of the world, especially in our Western world, and that creates very, very, very toxic environment. And we know how it looks like in our Western world. Basically breed real misogyny, real angriness and hatred towards women from men. This is actually happening in Western world. But in China, it's much worse. Even when they cannot talk about it directly, maybe because it's not cultural or the government will not allow you to talk about it. But the problem there is even worse. Combination with huge poverty, problems, basically no future, no possibility, no light at the end of the tunnel. it's create very desperate and depressive world for many people there. And this is toxic environment, what I'm talking about. And I'm hugely afraid that, and let's say even if the communist communist government will tomorrow collapse and China without civil war became federalized, it will have democratic election and everything will go smoothly. The problem is that people there have lived for now even generation in very toxic environment, in environment where the old one experienced great step forward, cultural revolution, where millions of people was literally dying on the street. The younger one live in an environment that is, and there is famous quote that in China is combination worst from communism and capitalism as well. So the capitalism belief in money is everything is very huge in China, but together with communist totalitarian regime where party members are almost almighty, corruption is everywhere, and then there is gender war bigger than the rest of the world. So this is creating enormously toxic environment. And even if all that will end up suddenly tomorrow, that's probably will not happen. But even if that would happen, these people already live in the toxic environment. Basically, they already live in unclean, unhygiene environment all their life. How much disease are inside them that will maybe and most probably one day spread, jump from them to another people, lead to plague and pandemic, probably worldwide. Not physically, but I'm now talking on mental level, behavior level. How you do not know that in some Chinese man, Chinese boy, there is literally right now not mentality that will one day lead to ideologies of hatred, evilness, and mass murder like communism, like fascism, like many other types of ideologies that led to murdering of millions of people. That's what we should be extremely afraid. And I know this is not, and this problem, the problem of toxic environment is not just in China. Let's look what is right now happening in South African Republic. The environment, toxic environment, what is now appeared in Europe and also in many cities of United States, what can appear from some totalitarian action of Canadian government and things like that. What if there is some person, let's say young Swedish boy, now living in one of the big Swedish city, constantly afraid of bomb attacks and raping and murdering immigrant gangs, who is now living inside of his home, constantly afraid, living in fear of for his life and future. And after a very long time of living under this condition, what kind of thinking will evolve in his? How it will metastasize and will create mental plague that will eventually cost us hundreds of millions of people, like it did happen before with communism or other ideologies. That's why I created idea of social behavior hygiene. Because if I'm right, if this theory is correct, it doesn't mean that we should look on toxic environments and we should be afraid of them. But also, we should do what is in our power to basically erase this toxic environment, to fix the problems with toxic environment. Same way as, let's say, you living in, let's say, in United States, you living in New Jersey, or let's say living in San Francisco, should care what is happening in New York, or in case of San Francisco, what is happening in San Diego or in Los Angeles, because it's city very nearby. And if your neighboring city that is accessible to you in just few minutes rides by car, how probable is that if in that city, because they are very unhygienic, if they are very unclean, some kind of disease that evolve in huge plague will appear, how probable it is that it will spread to your city as well, even when your city is clean and level of hygiene there is very good. It's the same way. We should care about other side of our world, especially when our world is now connected more than ever before. We saw that in case of coronavirus, and we know that for quite some time that disease that appeared in China can spread in any corners of our planet. So what if toxic environment on social level, social scale, create some kind of mental disease, evil ideologies that could, especially through our internet, can spread around entire world. And more we allow toxic environment on a huge scale even existed. If we allow entire China, billion of people living in poverty, in corruption, in censorship, under totalitarian regime, greater chance is that some kind of mental plague will actually appear eventually and spread around the world and cause many suffering and maybe even many deaths of people. We all should think about it very much. Thank you very much for your listening. I hope that all of you will think about social behavioral hygiene, and if it's true, maybe in some hopefully close future, we will all take actions to actually do and bettered mental hygiene around the world. Thank you very much for listening. I wish you all of you good and sunny days and peaceful nights. Good evenings and good mornings to all of you. Goodbye.